Hare Krishna and happy Diwali. Welcome to all those joining on Facebook. So today we are welcoming back after a long time Her Grace Shyamvallabha Gopi Mataji, who'll be discussing chapters 3 and 4 of Canto 5. Welcome back, Mataji. Over to you.
Thank you. So thank you everybody for joining. I know you could be doing lots of things on Diwali, so thank you for joining and especially for encouraging me. So before I start, I'll start off with the short Jai Radha Madhav, and then I'll share my screen. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjar Bihari Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janandana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Punjabi Hari Madhava Punjabi Hari. So I'm going to share my screen and please tell me if you could see it. So right now it'll be my computer screen, but let me share my slides. Can everybody see my screen?
We can see them, Mataji, thank you.
All right, so of course we're discussing two chapters today. The first one being Ṛṣabhadeva's appearance in the womb of Merudevī, the wife of King Nābhi, and then we'll go to just split it by chapter actually. So before I start, as normal, I'd like to seek blessings from my seniors, from all of you, that I may say something useful and to you guys, and yeah, and hopefully you find it beneficial or nicely summarize the chapter. So starting off with this. Om Jnanatimirandasya Nananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Pitamsha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakapatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Narayan Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Swatim Yasam Tato Jayamudiraye Shinvitam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hriday Antasto hi Abhadrani Vidodnoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayasi Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. So, in my normal format, like you used to, I've broken the chapter up into sections. So, chapter 3 is broken up. Verses 1 to 3 talk about Lord Vishnu's appearance in King Nābhi's sacrifice. So, verse 1 talks about how desiring a son, Nābhi and Merudevī worship Lord Vishnu. And then in verses 2 and 3, we'll see how the Lord appears in his beautiful form to Nābhi. And then in verse 4 and 5, we'll see that the priests are offering prayers in prose. So they are offering obeisances to Ṛṣabhadeva and chanting his glories and saying, he wipes out all sins. And then in verses 6 to 8, again, these are prayers from the priests, and the priests are saying, you're pleased by simple means and do not need elaborate sacrifice, but we do need them for material benedictions. Then in verses 9 to 10, the priests say, you have mercifully appeared before us, fools, only for our benefit. And then in verse 11, they say, your darshan is very rare. And then in verse 12, they say, please let us remember you during the difficulties of death. And then they say, Nābhi is foolish. He is asking you for something meager, as he has not worshipped the devotees. And they say, please excuse us for calling you here for such material things. And we'll see how they feel ashamed of asking for something material. And then in verses 16 to 20, the Lord's benediction to it talks about the Lord's benediction to King Nābhi. So actually in verses 16 to 19, it's described how the Lord was pleased and said, I will appear as Nābhi's son, proving the words of the Brahman as true. And then in verse 20, we finally reach the appearance of Ṛṣabhadeva. So verse 1, so Lord Vishnu's appearance in King Nābhi's sacrifice. So Nābhi is worshipping Vishnu for a son. This is how the chapter opens. And Nābhi is the first son of Angira, Agnidhira, and he desired to have sons, and his wife Merudevī was also without children. Therefore, they both worshipped Lord Vishnu, the master of all sacrifices, Yagna Purusham. So over here, we'll see that they are worshipping Krishna and not the demigods, but even though they have a material desire to have a son, it's important to do this for us as well, because Krishna says that a person who has broad intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. Why? Because what the difference between asking Krishna for something and asking the demigods for something is that Krishna will only give us what will be beneficial for our spiritual life. Otherwise, he may not grant our wish. Whereas the demigods give regardless of whether it is good for us or bad for us. So therefore, it's always best to approach Krishna. So over here, we see Nābhi and his wife approaching Krishna or Lord Vishnu for a son. So In verses 2, it talks about the 7 transcendental means to obtain the Lord's mercy in a sacrifice. And these are Dravya, sacrificing valuable things or eatables; Desha, by acting in terms of place; Kala, by acting in terms of time; Mantra, by offering hymns; Ritvik, by going through a priest; Dakshina, by offering charity to priests; Vindhana, by observing regulator principles. But what it says, Prabhupada mentions, is even after performing these sacrifices, we may not always attain Krishna. So what was the actual reason for the Lord's appearance? So the Lord, being affectionate to the devotees, Bhagavata Vatsalyataya, appeared before Nābhi. He worshipped him with great faith, devotion, and pure mind, while performing his prescribed duties. So the important thing here is, Krishna or Vishnu was pleased with Nābhi's faith and devotion and pure mind, and that's why he appeared, and out of his causeless mercy. So the Lord's form was unconquerable and captivating with 4 hands. His body was pleasing to the mind and eyes. He manifested it to fill the desire of his devotee. So, just relating it to our own life, we can't be successful in anything, material or spiritual, without sacrifice. Whether it is, whether we're a student and we're sitting in exam. So I recently sat an exam and I found it really difficult, but I had to study hard and I had to sacrifice my time. I had to sacrifice going to programs in order to pass my exam. So in order to achieve anything, you need to sacrifice. In order to run a marathon, or in order to even run a 10K run, you need to train, right? In order to earn money, we need to work. Even though we may not like it, may not love our job, but we still need to work to get some money. So that's a sacrifice. And in order to bring up a family, we have to sacrifice a false ego, and the mother has to sacrifice, has to go through so much pain through labor, breastfeeding. It's all a very difficult period. And as a family, we sacrifice to maintain a family. Now, similarly, in the age of Kali Yuga, Sankirtan Yagna is the main type of sacrifice we must perform to attain spiritual perfection. The scripture says, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam eva kevalam, kalo naste vinaste 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 vakatir anyata. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way, but the chanting of the holy name to attain Krishna, or to go back to Golok Vrindavan. So in verses 3, the beauty of the Lord is described. So Lord Vishnu appeared before King Nābhi with 4 arms. He was very bright, and he appeared to be the best of all personalities. Around the lower portion of his body, he wore a yellow silken garment. On his chest was the mark of Srivastava, which always displays beauty. He carried a conch shell, lotus, flower, disc, and club, and he wore a garland of forest flowers and the Kaustubha gem. He was beautifully decorated with a helmet, earrings, bangles, belt, pearl necklace, armlets, ankle belts, and other bodily ornaments, bedecked with radiant jewels. And now seeing the Lord, Nābhi, his priests, and the associates felt just like poor people who had obtained great riches, and thus they began to worship him respectfully. We've come across a similar scenario in the past where we see Dhruva Maharaj, who wanted a kingdom greater than his father and greater than Brahma. But when he saw the Lord, he no longer desired that, and he thought that that desire was like a broken piece of glass. So it's a very similar example here. When we see the Lord, we no longer want anything else material. So, so now in verses 4 to 15, we see the priests are offering prayers to in prose to Ṛṣabhadeva. So they say, "We are your servants, so please accept our respects offered to you repeatedly in line with great devotees. You are the most worshipable Lord, Arhatama. You are transcendental. Your name, form, and qualities are all transcendental and beyond the conception of experimental knowledge, and cannot be described by a man who is under the modes. Thus we don't know you." And they say, "Chanting your glories is auspicious and wipes out the sins of all mankind. By doing so, we can at least partially understand your supernatural position." So how can we understand the forms and attributes of Krishna? In this purport, Prabhupada explains that to understand the concept of the absolute truth, his name and his attributes, we have to read the descriptions given in the Vedic literatures and the authoritative statements given by exalted personalities like Brahma, Narada, Sukadeva Goswami, and others. But the most important way to understand Krishna is devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami says, "Ata Shri Krishna Namadhi na bhavet graham indriya." We cannot conceive the name, form, and qualities of Sri Krishna through our material senses. Because of this, other names for the Lord are Adokshaja and Aprakrita, which indicate that he is beyond any material senses. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the famous verse that we know, 1855, Krishna says, "Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yasyasmi tattvataha tato mam tattvato natva vishate tad anantaram." One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me, by such devotion, he could enter into the kingdom of God. So now the priests continue to offer prayers and say, "The simple means to satisfy you, and you're very easily pleased," they're saying. "And you're pleased when your devotees offer you prayers with faltering voices. Sabala sabda. And in ecstasy, bring you tulsi leaves, water, twigs, bearing new leaves, and newly grown grass." And we know that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it." So he's not expecting like gold coins or anything so big, but he's looking for our devotion. And then they continue praising the Lord. They say, "You have no need for elaborate arrangements, sacrifices, for worship, because all of life goals and opulences are directly, anjasa, self-sufficiently, atmanaha, unceasingly, avyaktirekena, and unlimitedly, ashesha, increasing in you. But we need them because we desire material benedictions." And here we see that the priests are regretful, thinking themselves without devotion. So Krishna is only pleased by devotional service. And this is taken from the purport. Would anyone like to read, or should I?
I don't mind reading.
Yes,
then.
please read, yeah.
Hare Krishna. The Supreme Lord can be pleased only by the devotional service. Therefore, it is said here that the Lord is surely satisfied by devotion and nothing else. Quoting from the Gautamaya Tantra, the Hari Bhakta Vilasa states, Tulasi dala matrena jalasya chalukhenava vikrinites from atmanam bhaktebhyo bhaktavatsalaha. Sri Krishna, who is very affectionate towards his devotees, sells himself to the devotee who offers merely to tulsi leaf and a palmful of water. The Supreme Lord is causelessly merciful upon his devotee, so much so that even the poorest of the men can offer him a little water and a flower in devotion and thus please him. This is due to his affectionate dealings with his devotees. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. So why did the Lord appear? In verse 9, the reason is given. He appeared by his causeless mercy. Prakara Karunaya. The priest said, You have appeared here to serve our interests and give us liberation in the form of realization of your glories. You have done so, although we are foolish, Bali Shanam, ignorant of the goal of life, Avidusham, and have not worshipped you properly, Na Apachita. So, similarly, out of the Lord's causeless mercy, he appears in his Archa Vigraha form, so in his deity form that we see Radha and Ishwar, to us, so we could see him, as we don't have the transcendental vision, we'd otherwise, right? And even though he doesn't really need anything from us, so, through deity, the deity is like the post box. We could communicate with Krishna. Krishna resides in the deities, and he allows us to serve him in this way, and for us to develop this personal relationship. And then the priests say, Your appearance is the greatest benediction, O most worshipable over all, Arhatama, you are the best of all benefactors, Birada Ṛṣabha, and your appearance as the object of our vision, Nija Purusha, Ikshana, Vishaya, is the sacrifice was the most valuable benediction. In the sacrifice was the most valuable benediction. And feeling obliged, the priest pointed out the rarity of the Lord's personal presence, even for elevated sages. And then in verse 11 they say, Your qualities produce bliss, Parama Mangala Ayana, and are recited repetitively by the great sages Muninam, who have burnt all contamination by the fire of knowledge and detachment, Asanga Nishita Nanala Vidudesha Malanam, have attained your qualities, Bhavat Swabhavanam, and are self-satisfied, Atmara Manam. Yet even for them, your personal presence is very rare. Please to say, so please help us remember you and utter your names, attributes, and activities, which destroys all sins. For at the time of death, we may not be able to remember you, while stumbling, suffering hunger, falling down, yawning, or suffering calamity. So the lesson we get from this is that the real success in life is Antanarayana Smriti, remembering the holy name, attributes, activities, and form of the Lord at the time of death. We should also imbibe a similar prayerful mood to these priests, similar to these priests, and have a sincere desire to want to try and remember Krishna 24 hours a day through our activities, so we could remember him at the provoking time of death to achieve a spiritual destination. But then you may ask, how can I remember Krishna 24 hours a day? I have so many responsibilities. So the answer to this, is do whatever work you're supposed to do as a wife, a husband, a businessman, a student, etc. But just keep Krishna at the back of your mind. And that way you could remember Krishna. So, it's very easy to remember Krishna when we're at the temple, chanting, attending a class like this, in a Sunday feast program, and when you have lots of devotees around you. But Krishna doesn't give you so many marks for this. Krishna gives you marks when you remember him whilst you're cooking, whilst you're cleaning. So you could think, I'm cleaning Krishna's temple, even if it's your own house, because you have the deity there, or a picture of Krishna there. When you're buying some vegetables in the shop to offer him, when you remember him whilst working even, because Krishna says, I am the ability in man. So you think, Krishna has given this to me. And so Krishna gives us marks for the times we remember him in our mind. So just like an exam paper, where marks are given according to the difficulty of the question, Krishna has similarly set up an exam paper for us. If we remember him in the temple, we get 5 marks. But if we remember him in provoking situations, surrounded by Maya, in school, in the office, whilst cooking, whilst traveling, Krishna gives us more marks. So how can you maintain this consciousness? If you keep a board in your heart and mind that you're always under Krishna's Paramatma CCTV surveillance, this will help you be conscious of Krishna 24 hours a day. Just like nowadays, we have CCTV cameras everywhere, right? In the house, on the roads, and it makes us cautious, Yeah. And yeah, so just like that, we should remember that Krishna is constantly looking at us. And so based on that, we'll act. We try and act in a good way, but we have to remember that constantly, that I am being looked at. And we could see Krishna everywhere. So the following verses, all personally spoken by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, in a logical sequence of time and category that follows one's daily activity, beginning with waking up, help us to see Krishna everywhere. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, time, I am time, Phala Asmi. Then he says, existence, I am the life of all that lives, Jivanam Sarva Bhuteshu. He says, speech, I am the letter A, Aksharanam, Aksharo Asmi. I am sound in ether, Shabda Ke Aham. Water, I am the taste of water, Rasaham Apsu. Krishna says, of birds I am Garud, Vinatesu Ja Pakshinam. Of trees I am people, Ashvata Sarva Vrikshanam. Of Nam or Diksha I am Japa, Japa Yagna Asmi. Of beauty, wealth, strength. Krishna says, all beauty, wealth, and strength is just a spark of my splendor. Yad yad vibhutimat sattvam shimad urjitam mama teja amsha. Of perfumes, I am the beautiful fragrance of the earth, punya gandha prithvi asmi. Of food, I am the fire of digestion, aham vaishnava naro. I am the heat and fire, asmi vibha vasu. Of the sunshine and moonshine, I am the light of the sun and the moon. Prabha asmi shashi surya yo. Of all bright things, I am the radiant sun. Jyotisham ravi asmi. Of exercise, I am the strength of the strong. Balam balavatam aham. Of the wind, of purifiers, I am the wind. Pavana pavatam asmi. And he carries on. Of months, I'm November, December. Masa Margasya Aham. Of seasons, I'm spring. Ritu Kusu Makara. Of school, I am the intelligence of the intelligence. Buddhi Matmam Aham. Of all knowledge, I am the knowledge of the self. Adhyatma Vidyanam. Of intelligence, I am the knowledge of the wise. Jnanam Jnanatvam Aham. Of work, I am the ability in persons. Purusham Nishu. I am the beginning, middle, and the end of all creations. And then he says, of animals, I am the lion. Of all water bodies, I am the ocean. Of the rivers, I am the Ganga. Of the fish, I am the shark. Of war, of generals, I am Skanda, the son of Lord Shiva. Of the moon, among all stars, I am the moon. Then he says, of intimacies, I am the union that is not against religious principles. And of secrets, I am silence. Manunam asmi guyanam. And then also Srila Prabhupada says, in the journey of self-discovery, he says that we must be very, very eager to see Krishna. And then he says we could see Krishna. He says, whether you are lusty or a thief or whatever, somehow you must develop this eagerness, this desire. I must see Krishna. Then Krishna will be seen. So in all these simple everyday ways, you could always remember Krishna everywhere and see his beautiful, sweet and charming, smiling face in everything that you see throughout the day. So in verse 13, they say that the priests think that Nābhi has a foolish desire because they say, however, this great king, Nābhi, desiring a son like you, is worshipping you. Although you could give all kinds of benedictions, like heavenly liberation, he is poor. He is a poor man approaching a wealthy man for a little grain. So a devotee is never concerned about anything material. Although Nābhi Maharaj wanted a son like Vishnu, wanting a son like God is also a form of sense gratification. A pure devotee wants only to engage in the Lord's loving service. And the priests revealed the reason for Nābhi having a material desire was because he had not associated with great devotees. So in this purport, Prabhupada says in verse 14, he gives the secret to conquering Maya. And this is by worshipping the lotus feet of great devotees. He said, Anupashrita Mat Charana. Unconquerable Maya will conquer him and bewilder his intelligence. Indeed, who has not been varied away by the waves of enjoyment which are like poison. So unless you worship the lotus feet of the devotee, then Maya will attack us. And in the purport, I thought this was quite nice. Would anyone else like to read, or should I read?
I can read, Mataji.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Freedom from Maya's influence is possible when one engages in the service of the great devotees. Mahacharana Seva. Without worshipping the lotus feet of a great devotee, one cannot be freed from Maya's influence. Srila Narottam Das Thakur therefore says, Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Paiche Keba. Who has been freed from Maya's clutches without serving the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Maya is aparajita and her influence is also aparajita, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7.14. Devi he Isha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratya. This divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
And it continues. There's quite a lot in this purport. So anyone else want to read?
Yes, I would like to read.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. By the association of the Lord's devotee, one no longer desires material opulence. This is confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 22.54. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastre Koi, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoi, and Mahat Kripa Vina Kona Karme Bhakti Nayam, Krishna Bhakti Dure Rahu Samsara Nahe Kshayam. If one is serious about escaping Maya's influence and returning home back to Godhead, one must associate with the sadhu, devotee. That is the verdict of all scriptures. By the slight association of a devotee, one can be freed from the clutches of Maya. Without the mercy of the pure devotee, one cannot get freedom by any means. Certainly, a pure devotee's association is necessary in order to obtain the loving service of the Lord. One cannot be freed from Maya's clutches without sadhu sangha, the benediction of a great devotee.
Thank you, Prabhu. And then I'll read this. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj says, Neshamatis tvad uru krama grim spritsyata artha vagamo yad artha mahiyasmam padaracho vishekam nishkinchananam bhavinitayavat. One cannot become the Lord's pure devotee without taking the dust of a great devotee on his head. A pure devotee is niskinchana. He has no mature desire to enjoy the material world. One has to take shelter of such a pure devotee in order to attain his qualities. The pure devotee is always free from the clutches of Maya and her influence. So now the priests continue to offer prayers, and they say, please excuse our offense for calling you in this negligible, materially motivated sacrifice, for you are the merciful and equipose performer of wonderful activities. So the pure devotee is Anya Vilasita Sunyam. He has no motive behind his worship. He is not conducted by the influence of Maya in the form of karma or jnana. The pure devotee is always prepared to execute the order of the Lord without personal consideration. The Ritvijja, the priest at the sacrifice, knew very well the distinction between karma and bhakti, and because they considered themselves under the influence of karma, fruit of activity, they begged the Lord's pardon. They knew that the Lord had been invited to come for some paltry reason. But the Lord was pleased. Thus, being praised by the priests in prose, the Supreme Lord, ruler of the Devatas, Animisha Ṛṣabha, spoke with compassion. I shall expand as Nābhi's son. You have prayers for King Nābhi to have a son like me, but I am the Supreme Person without a second. In any case, because you are qualified Brahmanas, and as good as my own mouth, your words should not prove untrue. Avidartha Girpi. Therefore, I shall personally appear in my plenary portion. Speaking thus, the Lord disappeared. And the Lord appeared as Ṛṣabha, the son of Merudevī, for he was satisfied with those great sages. He wanted to, So he wanted to exhibit the method of executing religious principles, varnashrama, and satisfy Maharaj Nābhi's desire. So now, moving on to the next chapter, which is chapter 4, and it's the characteristics of Ṛṣabhadeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Again, a breakup of this chapter is, in verses 1 to 3, the qualities of Ṛṣabhadeva are described. He exhibits all the qualities of the Supreme, so his father Nābhi named him Ṛṣabha. The ministers wanted him to rule. In verse 3, it says, Indra became envious and stops the rain. It seems very similar to the Govardhan pastime, right? Indra becomes jealous. But in verses 4 to 7, Nābhi's Vatsalya Ras and perfection is described. So in verse 4, it's described how in bliss, Nābhi raises the sun with transcendental affection. In verses 5, it talks about how being popular and able to protect the citizens, Ṛṣabha is enthroned. And in verses 5 to 7, the glories of Ṛṣabha, the glories of Nābhi are described. The father of the Lord and a worshipper of the Brahmanas, and how it describes how he attained Vaikuntha. In verses 8 to 19, Ṛṣabhadeva's exemplary character and his sons are described. So Ṛṣabha's perfect brahmachari and grihastha life is described in verse 8. In verses 9 to 13, Lord Ṛṣabhadeva's sons are described. In verses 14 to 15, Ṛṣabhadeva's qualities and activities followed by common men is described. In verses 16 to 18, it is described how he followed the instruction of the Brahmanas, although expert himself, to set the right example. And he performed worship through sacrifice, and the citizens were always satisfied. And then finally, in verse 19, in Brahma Varta, he instructs his sons. So Lord Ṛṣabhadeva distinctly manifested Avya Yaj Yamana, the symptoms of the Supreme Lord, Bhagavad Lakshanam, like auspicious marks on his feet when he was born. Day by day, his qualities, powers, detachment, sense control, and equal vision increased. Due to this, everyone wanted him to rule the earth. So, in this first purport, Prabhupada explains who he could accept as an incarnation of God. And he says that an incarnation of God must have the 6 opulences, namely wealth, strength, knowledge, beauty, fame, and renunciation. It is said that although Ṛṣabhadeva was endowed with all opulences, he was not at all attracted to material enjoyment. He was self-controlled and therefore liked by everyone. And also, Prabhupada explains that an incarnation of God has to be accepted by experienced people and by the symptoms and features described in the Shastras, which actually mentions all incarnations. So the Shastra actually mentioned all the future incarnations, all the past incarnations are all in the Shastra. So in verse 2, it describes how Nābhi names his son Ṛṣabha, the best among human beings. Seeing his good qualities, a well-built body with all the symptoms of Godhead, control of mind and senses, prowess, strength, beauty, name, fame, influence, and enthusiasm. And in verse 3, we see how, becoming envious of Ṛṣabhadeva, powerful Indra stopped the rain in Bharatvarsha. Understanding this, Ṛṣabhadeva, the master of yoga, Yagnapati, profusely poured water upon Ajnabha, his own place, through Yogamaya. So again, Krishna or Ṛṣabhadeva, his incarnation, can control, he doesn't really need the demigods to provide rain, or he doesn't rely on them. He actually sanctions that. So, where you see Indra's getting envious, again, Krishna, or Ṛṣabhadeva in this case, sets him right. He destroys his pride there by, again, allowing rain to fall. So what can we do? We could all perform the Sankirtan Yagna. This is essential in order to be maturely happy and to progress spiritually in Kali Yuga. So in verse 4, Nābhi's affection for his son is described. Nābhi was always blissful. Having attained his desire for a perfect son, whom he considered as the Supreme Lord and addressed in a faltering voice, this transcendental illusion was brought about by Yoga Maya, Maya Vilasita Mati. Thus he affectionately raised the Lord, who accepted the ways of an ordinary human. Grihiti Naraloka Sadharmam. Just as Krishna appeared as the son of Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj and accepted the ways of an ordinary human. And then in then Nābhi enthrones Ṛṣabhadeva, because the two reasons given here was because he was popular amongst the citizens and ministers, and because he would give protection to the people in terms of the Vedic religious systems. Samyaya Setu Rakshayam. To do this, he entrusted him into the hands of the learned Brahmanas. And then it's described how Nābhi attains Vaikuntha. So then Nābhi and Merudevī went to Badrika ashram. There the king worshipped Narayan in full samadhi, and in due course of time was elevated to Vaikuntha, Dan Mahi Manam. So in the Chandrogya Upanishad, there are 8 symptoms that are described of a person who is already liberated, even when living in this body. So how do you recognize this? There's 8 symptoms. He is freed from all sinful activities. Apahata papa. As long as one is under the clutches of Maya and the material energy, one has to engage in sinful activity. Bhagavad Gita describes such people as duskritina, which indicates that they are always engaged in sinful activities. One who is liberated in this life does not commit any sinful activities. Sinful activities involve illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling. The second symptom of a pure soul is that he is vichara, which indicates that he is not subjected to the miseries of old age. The third symptom is he is vimrityu. A liberated person prepares himself in such a way that he does not take on any more mature bodies, which are destined to die. In other words, he does not fall down again to repeat birth and death. The fourth symptom is that he's vishoka, which indicates that he's callous to material distress and happiness. The fifth symptom is that he's vichikatsa, which indicates that he no longer desires material enjoyment. The sixth symptom is that he is apipata, which means that he has no desire other than to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, his dear most pursuable Lord. 7 is satyakama, which indicates that all his desires are directed to the supreme truth, Krishna. He does not want anything else. 8 is satya sankalpa. Whatever he desires is fulfilled by the grace of Krishna. First of all, he does not desire anything for his material benefit. And secondly, if he desires anything at all, he simply desires to serve the Supreme Lord. That desire is fulfilled by the Lord's grace, and that is called Satya Sankalpa. Thus, the devotee attains the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Saddharma, or the same quality. Just as Krishna is never born and never dies, his devotee who returns to Godhead never dies and never takes birth within this material world. So this is how we recognize a pure devotee. So now in verse 6, the priests glorify King Nābhi. They say, who can follow and attain the perfection of Maharaj Nābhi? Because of his devotional service, the Supreme Lord agreed to become his son. Who can be a better worshipper of the Brahmanas than him? Because he worshipped them to their full satisfaction. They showed him Lord Narayan. So the Lord does not accept an invitation unless one is a Vaishnava. So these Brahmanas were certainly very expert in chanting the Vedic mantras. They were competent in the performance of the Vedic rituals, and over and above this, they were Vaishnavas. Therefore, by their spiritual powers, they could call on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and enable the disciple, Maharaj Nābhi, to see the Lord face to face. In verse 8, it's described how Ṛṣabha leads an ideal brahmachari life. So understanding his kingdom to be his field of activities, Ṛṣabhadeva first accepted brahmachari life and lived in the Gurukul. After completing education, he gave Guru Dakshina to his gurus. Then he accepted Jayanti as his wife, given by Indra, and carried out ritualistic activities ordained by the Shruti and Smriti Shastras. They begot 100 sons similar to himself. So in verses 9 to 13, the sons of Ṛṣabhadeva are described. And in the purple, Prabhupada highlights how it is not your quality and character, it's your quality and character that determines your caste. And this is not a birthright. So we see that although Ṛṣabhadeva was a Kshatriya, he had 100 sons of different castes. So 10 were Kshatriyas. So Bharata was the eldest. He was the great devotee with best qualities. And in his honor, this planet became known as Bharatvarsha. The other sons were Kushavarta, Ilavarta, Brahmavarta, Malaya, Ketu, Bhadrasena, Indrasprik, Vidarbha, and Kikata. And then 9 of the sons were Mahabhagavatas, or the Nava-yogendras. These Nava-yogendras actually predicted the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Nābhi. That's just an extra piece of information. So these were Havi Antariksha, Prabhadu, Pipalyana, Avirhotra, Drumila, Chamasa, and Ṛṣabhadeva. They were very exalted advanced devotees, authorized speeches of Srimad Bhagavatam, and glorified for their strong devotion to Vasudeva. And later they're described in Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 11, verses 1 to 5. And then there were 81 perfectly qualified Brahmanas that were born, who were well cultivated, well behaved, very pure in their activities, and expert in Vedic knowledge and rituals. So in verse 14, Ṛṣabhadeva's qualities are listed. So he was fully independent, Atma Tantara, eternally free from material miseries, Nitya Nivrittantara, he was full of transcendental bliss, Kevala Nanda Anubhava, he was the controller, Ishvara, he was equiposed, Samha, he was undisturbed by material senses, Upashana Santana, he was friendly to everyone, Maitriya, he was merciful to all, Karunikaha, and he was unhappy to see others unhappy. Like an ordinary jiva, he strictly followed the principles of Varna ashram, which had become neglected. Thus he taught the ignorant public by his example. He regulated the people in household life by enabling them to attain religion, wealth, fame, offspring, material pleasure, and finally eternal life. So, what we can learn from Ṛṣabhadeva is he could only transform hearts if he preached by example. So whatever action is performed by a great man, common men will follow. Yeah, just, you could imagine if you tell someone, if say, you're a parent, if my parents told me to do something, it's less likely that I listen to them if I see that they're doing the opposite. Yeah, like I've just at work, as my colleague was saying, that their parents tell them not to drink, but they drink themselves. So it's likely the child's not going to listen to them, right? So similarly, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Yat yat archati shetas tattad eva tarojana sayat pramanam muruta lokastad anuvartate. Where it says, wherever action a great man performs, common men will follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. What are the qualities of a leader? And in these two verses, these are described. I'm so sorry, it's noisy outside. So people in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. A teacher must follow the principle of Shastra, scripture, to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures like the Manu Samhita. The king or the executive head of a state, the father and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. They must be so ideal that by following them, one could be relieved from the clutches of material existence. So following the Brahmanas, Ṛṣabhadeva knew the confidential Vedic knowledge, which contains all dharmas. Yet as a Kshatriya, he followed the Brahmanas to perfectly maintain social order. So Ṛṣabhadeva set the correct example because Kshatriyas or kings are supposed to listen to the Brahmanas, and if they do so, then the rule that assures that they're ruling in the correct way to keep everybody happy in the kingdom. And he performed sacrifices. He satisfied Lord Vishnu by performing sacrifices according to Vedic injunctions, with proper ingredients, at the proper place and time, and with youthful and faithful priests. So such a leader doesn't exist in today's society. And that's why we get riots, wars, etc. And the citizens were satisfied. When Lord Ṛṣabhadeva ruled, even common men did not seek false objects by asking from others. They were completely satisfied and observed in great affection for the king. And then finally, in verse 19, Ṛṣabhadeva instructs his sons. So once while touring the world, Lord Ṛṣabhadeva reached Brahmavarta. There in an assembly of the best brahmanas and sages, he instructed his sons on how they could rule the world very perfectly. His sons were all behaved, Parashraya, devoted, Pranaya, and qualified. At the same time, the citizens were able to hear. And we'll hear about this in the next chapter. And it's the benediction of hearing the next chapter. So please do come 2 weeks. So it says, the instructions of Lord Ṛṣabhadeva to his sons are very valuable. And if one wants to live peacefully within this world, which we all want, which is full of miseries, then we must read these instructions. So I'll stop sharing there. And does anyone have any comments, questions, or corrections?
Okay. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, Dharmendra Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Prabhu.
Yes. Shyamvallabha Mataji, can you hear me?
I could hear you. Yes, Prabhu.
Yes. At a certain moment of your PowerPoint,
Mm-hmm.
I read and heard you reading that the waves of enjoyment are like poison.
Yes.
So my question is, how do you explain such a statement?
So this, I took that directly from Prabhupada's purport. So why the waves of enjoyment like poison? It's because when we engage in sense gratification in this material world, we enjoy that. Basically, what happens is that we think that this material world is wonderful, and then therefore what happens is we no longer want to take. The problem with that is that we're no longer surrendered to Krishna because we think everything in this world is wonderful. So there's, everything's going well. What's the need to you go to Krishna? The more actually, so that's why these waves of enjoyment in this material world are like poison, because they entangle us more and more in this material world, like a chains. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.